Would you mind please starting with a brief introduction? So that can just be your name, but feel free to add your age and profession and where you're from.
Cool. All right. I am Emily. I'm 26. I am a speech and language therapist, which is probably the best job in the world. And then I'm originally from Auckland, but I spent the last 7 years or so living in Christchurch because I studied down there and then moved up, which is cool. Yeah.
And what do you know about Help Auckland and how did you come to hear of us?
I know a few things, mainly since getting involved. I had never heard of Help before I arrived at court one day and someone said, "Do you have someone from Help?" And I was like, "No, what is that?" And so that's kind of the first time I'd ever heard about you guys or what you do. But yeah, now that I have been through the process and have so much to do with everyone, I kind of have more of a gist of what's going on.
And can you please tell us a little bit about your sexual abuse experience and how old were you at the time and what happened, but just whatever you feel comfortable to say.
Okay. I have a bit of a special case. My first sexual abuse was when I was about 17 or 18. It was at a party at the end of high school. I was visited by the police the next day. My dad actually called them after he realised that I came home and was just not okay. I was just planning on saying nothing and just pretending it never happened. But yeah, Dad phoned the police, they got involved, and then because I was going to move to Christchurch, I sort of put it on hold and said, let's not worry about it. And then 4 years later, I got a call that his name had come up again and he'd done the same thing to someone else, which is when I restarted my court process, and just not for myself, but just for other women. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, because he's a repeat offender, yeah.
Yeah. So it took a really, really long time to get sort of all up and all completed and everything.
So how long did the whole process end up taking?
It was about 8 or 9 years before everything got to court. It was only beginning of this year that we went through the final court process, just because COVID and all of the hold-ups and all of the court things. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but
yeah. And so it was 4 to 5 years of your time as well once you got restarted, and that's a huge commitment. So
yeah. Massive.
Well, good on you for seeing it right through until the end, and getting a result. How did the whole thing leave you feeling?
All of it all together has been such a roller coaster. So this all happened way back in 2016, and then I picked it up again in 2020. End of 2020, I was actually involved in quite a scary home invasion where I woke up to a strange man on top of me in my own bed, which was awful and really scary. And so I had that going at the same time as I had this court process going, and it was all one thing. That one got solved super quickly because they found him on the day, which was fantastic. But yeah.
Did that one end up going to court as well?
So that one went to court. That one I didn't have to go to trial for at all. They just went straight to sentencing. He pled guilty, and so that one was quite different to this one where I had to sit on the stand and say everything that had happened to me all over again.
Yeah, that's a lot to deal with at
the
same time. And through all that, did you think it was okay to seek help?
Yeah, most definitely. In 2016, I was offered counselling through ACC, because once you go to the police, they kind of get everyone possible involved with you, which I think is the most amazing system. As soon as you go and talk to someone, especially the police, they have ACC counselling services, they get doctors involved, they make sure you are as good as you can be, which is incredible. In 2016 at the time, I said no, because 18-year-old me thought I was fine and I would just move on with my life like nothing had even happened. But then, of course, in 2020, it just gets a little bit more awful, and then everything starts coming up. So I did seek counselling, and I reckon getting help was the best thing I could have done for myself, because there was 4 years of my life where I just kind of blacked it out of my mind. I didn't really talk to anyone about it. I just ignored it as best that I could. And it wasn't until I spoke to someone that I realized there were so many things that I'd done that were actually because I was hurting and because I had this like awful trauma that I carried with me. And so I'd sort of become this person where I didn't want to feel sad. I never cried about anything, and I'd kind of like emotionally shut down without even realizing it. And I think getting help and talking to someone and actually realizing like it's okay to know that awful things have happened to me and bad things have happened in my life, but I'm going to be all right. And like just admitting to myself that was probably the biggest hurdle. Yeah.
Sometimes it's the hardest thing to just sit in those emotions. I don't know. People say to just sit in those emotions and process them, but that can feel like the most daunting part.
Yeah.
And it's common that people can take, you know, many years until they come forward. So
yeah.
Also, I just want to say, like, kudos to your dad as well for, you know, encouraging you at the time and when you were ready and well, these other circumstances arose. And
Yeah. My dad has probably been my like biggest support in all of this, because like the night that it happened, he picked me up from the party. He realized I wasn't okay. He called the police. So then that means that he's also a witness in this whole court process. So he's going through his own thing, worrying about me, obviously, and wanting the best outcome for me, while also he's like up on the stand getting questioned about everything he did as well. Yeah.
And what to say now, did your dad receive any support as well? Like, did your dad need support?
No, although my family, we're very much like have a cup of concrete, you cry about it, you move on. Like, that's kind of how we've always been raised. Like, nothing's really that bad that you can't get out of bed. And then, like, it wasn't until all of this happened to me that we started really openly talking about, like, depression and PTSD and anxiety and all of these things. And so I think it's, like, only since all of this that any of my family has realized that, like, maybe sometimes it's not just that easy to like pick yourself up. And so, like, as much as like I think he would benefit from chatting to someone, because obviously it's so scary to see like your own daughter go through these things, like I think he's definitely one of those dads where he's
it's opens up like communication in the family as well, and like emotional communication about like personal things. I think sometimes we have a tendency just to talk about, you know, it's just those quick check-ins about, oh, how was everything? Like, good. How's the weather? Good. Like, instead of shut it down. So it's nice that it's hopefully opened up some more doors to deeper connection. And so how has Help's Court Support Service helped you on your journey towards healing?
Massively. Hugely, because I've had two completely different court experiences. That first one back in 2020, I went in completely blind and I read my victim impact statement in front of all of the lovely lawyers and everyone, and all I had was this detective who kind of just explained to me what we were doing, and I was like, yep, great, we'll be fine. And I was completely unprepared. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know what I was going to see. And as soon as I started reading, I just completely broke down, and someone had to finish my statement for me. And that always kind of left me feeling like I didn't really get to have my say. And so this time around, now that like this case from 2016 has come to court, it was really important to me that I was really strong and I said everything I needed to say, and I did it with my voice. And I think having help, I got to walk through the courts with like, and ask all the questions I wanted to ask, and have someone sit there with me who I'd talked to previously. Like, I worked with Emily, and she did, I think it was 2 or 3 sessions before we even got there, and she really listened to exactly what I wanted. And I told her, as silly as it sounds, I didn't want to cry. And so we practiced like what I was going to say, and she came with me to view all of my video evidence just so that I'm not sitting alone in a room with a computer, and I had someone to sort of debrief about it with. And I just think having her there was so much more helpful because she'd done it before and she knew exactly what she was talking about, and she's given the advice to so many people so that she knew exactly what to say to make you feel better. So yeah, that was really special. Yeah.
And so what are some other services, like have you received any other support through other services, and how have they sort of combined to help you achieve some form of justice and sort of sense of healing?
Yeah, mainly all of my therapy and counselling, that all came from ACC, which is incredible, amazing for anyone who has access to that. Also, the New Zealand Police, they are amazing at what they do, and especially in these cases, like everyone I dealt with was so sweet and so lovely and like so gentle and gave you all the time you needed to say everything you needed to say, and it was all on my terms. It was exactly what I needed it to be, and you get to sort of like, you get to do everything in your own way, and you get so many options, like especially like in court, I didn't have to sit in the courtroom. I could do it via the video evidence, which made it better for me to be able to say what I need to say. But yeah, definitely all of the therapy and counselling services, that was a massive, massive turning point for me. Yeah.
So looking at other ways that people can seek support and improve their mental health after trauma, how have your family, friends and community helped you during the process?
Hugely. My family has been an absolute rock. Like, they are always there when you need them. Like, whether it's like the middle of the night, you can give them a call and they are happy to listen or happy to chat or happy to do whatever, which is incredible. My friends, it's just the awful part of being a woman is I have so many friends who have gone through the same process before. And as much as like we can lean on each other, it is really scary to go and talk to your friends and they also be like, oh yeah, it's happened to me. And then I have friends who've also sought like the same help and the same process, and it's just what it is being a woman, which is unfortunate. But as awful as that is, the fact that we can talk about it so openly, and no matter how like scary and awful things are, they understand, like they get it. And that's probably the most important thing, because the worst part of any of this is talking to someone who just goes, oh, that was so awful for you. And then you kind of are like stuck with it. And I think that's really hard. So having people who've been through it before is really important.
So are there any activities like exercise, meditation, or I know you might like to run, that have supported your healing as well?
Yeah, I, in this sort of healing journey, have become a bit of a serial hobbyist, where I will pick things up and get all of the tools that I need, start it, and then move on to something else. And so I just think this whole journey has been sort of about me finding me again, which is really nice. It sounds bad, but like my entire adult life so far has been taken up with this whole process. And so I am just figuring out who I am. So I've gotten into painting and running, and I do dance now, and it's like all of these amazing things that just help me connect with who I am and like especially who I was as well. And I love it. I don't know if everyone else loves it, but that like inner child thing where like I never got to do dance when I was little, so I'm trying it now as an adult, and that has been like the biggest like healing circle. Like I know like little M would look up at me and be like, well, she's so cool. And like I think that's like been a huge driver in like me getting back to me. Yeah.
I love movement as well for healing.
Yes. Yeah, because the other thing, like especially like having like a PTSD diagnosis now, like your entire body is affected. So I have like major gut issues and like IBS that come from mental health. So if my mental health isn't good, I cannot eat. Like it's just awful. And so I really need to like make sure I like keep myself in check constantly, and like moving and getting out in the sunshine. That's really like my favorite way. Yes.
And so, yeah, flowing on from that, do you feel like you're in a better place now than you were immediately after the abuse?
Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. I think now I look at myself and I think it's because I know more now. Like, straight after the abuse, I kind of picked myself up and I just carried on. And in my head, I was so strong. Like, I was solid and I was good. And now, like, I just like fall apart at anything. But the biggest learning journey for me is that now me completely falling apart is okay. And that wasn't okay for me before. I didn't let myself do that, and I didn't let myself have the freedom to feel upset and to feel sad and to feel scared. But now all of those emotions are all right. So it's still me learning that, like, I'm not like weak now. Like, I can cry and that's okay. And it's so much better now that I can cry and I can be upset and I can feel scared and I know what to do about it, rather than just like pushing everything down as deep as I can and just motoring on, because that was just a recipe to burn out.
Just blocking the emotions. And so why do you think that free specialised support services for survivors of sexual abuse and their loved ones are so important?
I think it's so important because without it, it's so hard to just be a person. Like, getting up every day is difficult and it is hard. And when all this first happened, I hated hearing the word survivor. Like, I really didn't like it, because at that time I was just surviving. Like, that's all I was doing. I was getting by, I was ticking things off my list. And now, after I've had all of this incredible help, I have so much more freedom. Like, I have my entire life to look forward to. I don't just have to make it through the day. And so I can be Emily again, and I can be fun, and I can go out with my friends, and I love my job, and I love who I am. And that's something that I wouldn't have had without all of the help that I got. Yeah.
And what changes would you like to see in this space, if any? I'm sure for most people there's quite a few. Most of I know there's quite a few. But that could be in terms of sexual abuse legislation, support services, or a society's response to sexual abuse as a whole.
Yeah. I think the worst part of all of it was that it's so scary to tell your story, because everyone will call you a liar. They think you're lying, they think you're making it up, like, and the only thing that you've got is that you know exactly what happened to you, and nobody else is ever going to understand that. They're never going to know that story. They're never going to know what actually happened. And that was something that I really struggled with. And I think, like, I feel so lucky that I was so confident to stand up and say really solidly that this is what happened to me. And I stuck to that, and I wanted to see it through, and that was really important. And there are so many people out there where that would be the most difficult thing in the world to do, because it was really, really hard, and it was really, really scary. And there were so many times where I just wanted to give up. I just wanted to throw in the towel and think, why not just let them get away with it? Because it's tough. Like, it's a tough process, but you come out the other side, and I feel so proud of myself, and I feel so much stronger because of it. And I think it would have always been like a what if, and I think that would have been really hard to live with. Yeah.
And I think one of the things, if you don't mind me, one of the things that you mentioned as well was, like, the assumption that name suppression and getting the name suppression lifted and things like that for being able to share your story.
Yeah.
Like, so many things that you don't sort of get told, and different hurdles that you have to overcome.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many parts of it where it just feels like setback after setback, and it gets really scary. And there's so many times where you just feel like completely alone until you reach out to see, like, who you can connect with.
And do you have any advice for anyone who has been sexually abused and needs help?
Yes.
In essence, yes. And
I will always, always, always say this, no matter how awful and how scary it is, please tell someone. Like, that is the most awful feeling to just live with forever. And I would never wish it upon anybody to ever have a story like that they just couldn't tell. And I think that talking to people, and especially professionals, they're so well trained. And if it's things like family, like, they never have to know that you've gone and sought help for these things. That can just be something that you do for you. And I just think that is, like, so important. Yeah.
And that essentially wraps up the questions. But is there anything further that you wanted to add about your experience with help or about your personal story? You can say no.
What do I want to add? No, I think, okay, this was another big turning point for me, especially in therapy, is that, like, straight afterwards, I saw myself as this, like, really strong, solid person who was clearly not well at the time. And my therapist very sternly told me, you're never going to be that girl again. And that destroyed me for a long time because I loved that person. She was so tough and she could handle anything. And I think that was the scariest part for me, is that now I do have to live with the fact that these bad things happened to me. I've got a diagnosis of PTSD and this is who I am now. But now, like a couple years on, it's so exciting because I'm this, like, whole brand new person, and I have all these feelings that I can feel really deeply, and I have all these conversations that I can have that I would have just completely avoided before, and I now know me better than I ever would have. Yeah.
That's very good. Thank you.